Hey everyone, my name is Brett Wheelis with the Built on Truth podcast. Today, my guest is Pastor Matt Smith. He is a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, a former Olympic caliber rower, and a retired triathlete. And he's a great friend of mine, so happy to have you on. Matt, welcome.
Thanks. This is my moment of fame. I'm excited. I made it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background. So you allude to it every once in a while on Sunday sermons, and your background's in training. For a lot of the folks who don't know, you were a really big catalyst whenever I actually went into the training field, and you gave me a lot of advice, a lot of wisdom that was really, really beneficial. So we're hoping to encourage the folks today who might not have a fitness background or considering that.
And so all your clients can realize that secretly I've been training. I was kidding.
Yeah.
I tease.
Every good trainer has a good
mentor. So my background, real brief. I mean, I'm 46, which feels, truly middle-aged. So it partly feels very old, even doing something like this to talk about all that. But still young-ish, got some gray in the hair. But yeah, so for a long time, right when I was in my 20s, I graduated college and I went to back east after I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I was a water polo player going into that. And then partway through that, I ended up quitting. I was pretty burnt out and had broken my foot and had to do another sport. So I started rowing. Did well with the rowing and made the national team or the kind of feeder team national team. And that was in New York. And so right after I graduated, I drove out to New York to live there and train. So this is, right after college. So 21, I guess, 22, whatever. And then did that for 4 years trying to make it to the Olympics. So that was great and had, that whole experience. And then while I was doing that, I needed another job. So I got a job coaching rowing, because if you're training with the national team, coaching is a lot easier to do. So I was the head coach at Brandeis University for rowing, which isn't really known as necessarily a rowing school, but we did pretty okay when I was there. And then I was one of the other coaches that helped out at one of my rowing partners was a coach at Boston College, so I helped out there a lot. And then when I came back to San Diego after all this, I was at USD for a little bit, but the coaching was always just a side gig. And then I still didn't have enough money. So I also got a job as a personal trainer. And it's funny because the normal way you approach this is you get all your certifications and your degrees. And I went into the nicest place. So in Boston at the time, there was this place called Health Point. And so it's where the Celtics trained, and they had like a hospital and they had really high-end training. And I walked in with no certifications. And I said, you should give me a job. And they're like, why should we give you a job? And I'm like, because I'm the best. Whatever. It said something absurd. And I said, you should actually pay me to get the certifications. And they're like, it's a bit audacious, right? And so they're like, why would we do this? I'm like, well, think about it. Like, really nice restaurants don't hire waiters, they hire busboys. So you get to train me up to be, with all your habits, I'm your person. And they bought it. They were like all in. So they paid for all my certifications and everything. And so I was a trainer while I was doing the rowing and the coaching. Those were kind of my jobs. And then when I retired from the rowing and came back to San Diego, before I went to seminary, all this, I was personal training at the time. And in that, I had to really be full-time in it because we were having a baby, and this is my full-time job. And I tried to get a 9 to 5 for a little bit, and I was just dying. And so I just stuck with the training, really prayed a lot about hopefully getting clients. And so I did that for some years until we started the church. And so when the church was starting, I was personal training on the side. So a lot of the first people at our church were my clients. And so they were like chained to me. And so the whole time, like, I enjoyed training, but it was really like kind of a mission field. So I don't know in terms of the background of it, I think, so my undergrad and was in psychology and athletic coaching, which was from UC Santa Barbara, which was kind of a bit of a kinesiology sort of background. And then for my certifications, I don't remember all of them. I got like a lot, but I got the CSCS, strength and conditioning coach, what is the other one? The ACSM. I got that one. I got the medical exercise specialist. I just got a ton of, that was actually great. I got a bunch of them. And so it was awesome. You had to keep upgrading them and did all that. But then really I was a good coach. So I was able to do that. And
what made you a good coach?
Well, I think the same thing. We'll get to this as we go. But I mean, I've always been a big discipline guy. And so the thing that was making me make it for rowing was something I always want to instill in my clients. And so The weights, the hard part of being a trainer, and not to give away what you do in any way, but the hard part of being a trainer is at one level, people are paying you to tell them to do push-ups. Like anyone can,
Yep.
you can get in shape. And just like eating well, you can eat well. It's not rocket science. I mean, even being a pastor, some of the things I say in counseling are pretty basic. Like, hey, you shouldn't be a jerk, to your wife, or hey, you should do, but the problem is that implementing it. I think for a lot of people, we're not used to that. And so I think that what helped me as a trainer and helped me is this is kind of those like mental excuses we make. Everyone wants to get pumped up. They want to watch the Rocky. I remember this as a rower. When I was in college rowing, and you would come to races and the team would really bond and people would get pumped up before a race. And I remember when I started making junior year, I started going back east to train with some of these like kind of club teams, these international club teams. And the teams weren't cohesive like that. And
international teams.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they were like, the individuals that were there were more professional about how they approach things. It was really interesting. So I remember the first experience with this one team.
So this is your junior year at Santa Barbara. You're going to these like international meets.
Yeah. And really,
experience.
I know, right? And I'm from California, so I'm like the barbarian. So this is all like Ivy Leaguers on these teams. So I'm like there's not a lot of California. I was a lightweight, so there's a different thing. And anyway, so one of the teams, the New York Athletic Club, is one that's the big sponsor that we had at the time. And I remember one of the races, my first experience of this, right? I'm kind of like nervous. And
had races before?
Yeah, lots of races. But for this team, New York Athletic Club was interesting because if you win, they'll keep racing you. And if you lose, they won't. And so this was something I wanted to do. I wanted to go for it. And so New York Athletic Club was like the feeder team for the national team. This was like the guys that year. This was it. So I was excited. I'm in these boats. And
how many guys are in the boat?
8.
Okay.
And
you're in the 8-man boat because there's different boats.
For New York Athletic Club, right? So then the national team would then feed guys from there. And then not to go, but so there's another Matt Smith. This is how God humbled me. And when
such a unique individual, and I love the part that there was another Matt Smith in this Olympic caliber boat.
Yes. And so for my first like race where there was like these 2 boats for the New York that were both 2 USA boats. And we're at the head of the Charles, which is this race back east. And so this is my first time saying, hey, come on out. The guys in my boat are all like national team guys. This is my big show. And they divided us up into, there was 4-man boats. So I was in a straight 4 or a coxed 4, a 4-man boat with a guy steering it. Mm-hmm. And we're in this race and they're like, which one are you? And I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh no. There's another Matt Smith who actually ended up making the national team, making the Olympics. He's better than me. And so this is how God humbled me. I was a brand new Christian at this point. And I had to say, I'm the slower Matt Smith. So I was one of the fastest guys like in the world. I was a very fast rower. And I had to be, of those people, of those 8 guys, I wasn't the faster one. I was a slower one. It was a funny little thing I'll never forget. And so like literally like I can't even find anything about me now. I'm like I'm just a nobody. And it's really good humbling. It was just, I'm a never made it kind of guy. But I was like at that level. I could have done it. I retired from rowing. I'll get to that in a second. But at the very front end of my career. And so, but back to this first race, I think the thing that hit me was everyone would like listen to pump up music. And I remember seeing this one guy reading, I think it was like a romance novel or something. He was just reading a book and it was time to go. And the coach, this guy, Vinny Ventura at the time, was like, all right, everyone, let's go to work. I'm like, there's no pump up. There's just like, let's just do what we do. And I remember this.
No speech or anything.
Nothing, no speech. And then when we were out there, the guy steering the boat, this is the 8. We're at the start of the line. He's like, okay, let's go. And we do this move in the race. I remember that put us up a good bit. And he's like, okay, we got a boat length. His name was V. He's like, we got a boat length, situation normal. Just keep going. And I'm like, what is happening here? And we like dominated this race. And at the end, I'm like, yes. And I was like totally normal, like just play chill. And I realized like at that level, you just, and it has stuck with me too. And this is the same with personal training. It's like the motivation and the Rocky is stupid. Like I know that to be really, really good at that, like top level percentage is doing boring things that almost anyone can do. It's just doing it again and again and again. And when it gets boring, you're still doing it again and again. And it's just that consistency of doing basic things. And so this is going back to the training, which just started this question.
There's a great point you made. This was years ago, but you mentioned people want to be tougher. They want to add that extra spark, and they think it means grabbing the sledgehammer and hitting the tires just a little bit harder, a little bit harder. But it's actually in the details, in the boring,
Yes.
consistent routines that actually make you.
Well, yeah, and you can see this not only with like effort. That's what I mean by the weights. Also with technique. So, for example, people say I'm just trying to get into golf, and I don't want to get into that too much. But like, I'm 46. It's not, but I love the puzzle of it. And the point that's interesting to me is everyone says practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And I say bullcrap. Excuse my language. Like, because it's in unpractice. Because the idea is that when you practice poorly, you're kind of slotting bad habits in place. And that's not really true. So when I would have as a coach, a rowing coach, let's say you had someone on a boat that wasn't getting the stroke right, you can give them all the instruction in the world, and they might hit it for a few and then they might lose it, but your mind starts to think, and golf similar, like when you start thinking about all the stroke, it's crazy, your mind goes crazy. Whereas if you just said, okay, we're going to row for 2 hours straight, and you just give them, and they're going to eventually get fatigued, you set up the kind of ecological environment of training where they can't help but slot into the right habits, or else their back's going to hurt, or else their hand's going to, that makes us. So then you look at your client, or you look at, personal training. So much of it is, the variety and the rest really is about getting them to keep going, and if they do it, some people say, oh, do you need to work out 4 days a week or 2 days a week? I don't know, what are you going to do without stopping? Let's do that and keep going. And so for a lot of people, they do really great with that. But there's this overemphasis on making sure everything's the correct thing. I think the grind, when you're a beginner at something, it's okay to have bad habits somewhat. Like the grind's going to pay off.
And you were gearing up. What year was this for the Olympics? And you didn't end up going.
Yeah. So
what was the point where you're just like, no, I didn't make it?
Well, even before I went. So when I got saved, when I became a Christian, because all this started off as non-Christian, and I went into the rowing, the same reason I was doing the water polo, and I've always been an obsessive person, and I went into it, and I don't want to go too far down this road, but like, to me, I wanted to be a somebody, and so I thought if I'm the best in the world at something, that means something. And it's so funny right now because of how fleeting even that is. Like no one even remembers
truly, like
who won, who was the fullback of the whatever team from. I'm sure there's some guys like, well, technically, but like nobody remembers. You barely remember. But in any case, I wanted to do this and kind of be the best at something. And so when I was in New York on that training trip, that's when I got saved. And it changed my life because I realized that, I wanted to pursue the Lord. And I felt a call to be a pastor after about a year during this time. And I was so overwhelmed by this sensation that I needed to do this, that I wanted to be done right away. It took the fight out of me for rowing in a weird way. And so that 2004 was the Olympic year. And that year we did really well. So the only available boat that we could have made to the Olympics, so it was a lightweight at the time, was the lightweight double. The straight four had already been decided. I believe the other Matt Smith might have been in it. I don't even remember, but regardless, that was like an event that had already been decided. And so it was like an open trials for the lightweight double. And this is a big deal because our coach, what happened is I'm in this 8-man boat, which is going to be like the lightweight 8 that's going to go to Worlds. And this is an Olympic training year getting ready. And the coach, so then all of a sudden the question is, do you want to go to Worlds or do you want to go to the Olympics? And I'm like, I want to go to the Olympics. So the entire boat broke down into these 2-man teams to try to make it to the Olympic event, which was a lightweight double, which is it's like tennis to pickleball. It's a different sport because in a straight, you're 1 oar. And the double, you're 2 oars, and you're steering the whole thing. So all of a sudden, I went from a guaranteed seat to go for this thing. And it was really weird because they get all the rowers and they go to these things called speed orders, where you just race in singles. And then coaches are there watching you, and it's like the dating game. They're trying to see which rowers they want to pick and put together to try to make a run for it. And so our coach was this guy named Dave Ploss, and he got together with me and this guy named Mark Lauder, and Slaughter, I can't remember his last name right now. Whatever, he's not going to watch this. So he was amazing. He was like a nuclear physicist from MIT. All these crazy dude. And like I said, we were lightweight, so we had to weigh in at like 153. So he was 6'1" and 153. Yeah, it was like we were crazy. So anyways, so we end up getting to this double, and so then you're racing each other all year at these various events to get ready. And so the U.S. Nationals, which is a pretty big, we won. So in a lot of respects, we were very highly favored. And to be that level, our rowing scores were very good. We were highly ranked. We were some of the best in the world. And then the guys that beat us had been retired and they came out and just smoked us. And so that was fine, but we were raw. Like it wasn't really expected that we were going to make this first one. It was more like we were the kind of the raw young guys that still had some Olympic cycles to go. And so this is a very front end of our career, like rookie. And that was the end of my career. I couldn't go even a step. So I was like probably the year going into it.
How come the end?
I couldn't not pursue being a pastor. I was obsessed with the idea. And so I remember selling my boat to go make a down payment for my wife's car to move back here to go to seminary. I just remember it was crazy. And then this is funny, the national team, it was very hard to quit because I was good at it. It was the front end. But I wasn't we were already with their private coach. So it was a little easier. And so then the U.S. boat goes off and they did well. And the U.S. 8, the heavyweight 8, I think won that year. So fast forward, I'm in San Diego at USD. And they have a race in San Diego, and there's one of the guys was sick, and they asked me to jump in the boat for the lightweights, and we beat the heavyweights that year for that race. And there's all this controversy, and then all of a sudden the coach is like, "Oh, when are you gonna be back?" And then the Olympic Training Center was built out here. I'm like, this could really work, and I really had to quit all over again.
Oh,
and then funny thing, fast forward years later.
That's kind of nice. You get the chance. I still got it.
I know, but so after that, I quit. I stopped coaching. I totally quit. And then I needed to separate myself because there's that's why I did triathlon. That's why I did these things. I had to separate myself from this obsession for self-glory for a minute. And I couldn't, to me, to be the best at something, you have to obsess about it. And I wanted to obsess about God, and I couldn't do both. And so, I'm still the same way. And that was it. So I quit rowing so I could keep that. And so I said, I'll do triathlon for fun.
So your triathlon career, tell us a little bit about that. So you're right on the heels of your what could have been rowing career, and now you're
well, yeah. So I think it's in neither case do I have actually a career. It's funny. I just flirted with being great at things. I never really stuck it. So
which is fantastic because you're such a capable guy, and to be almost incredible.
I'm a really good loser. Yeah, it's what it is. I'm a really good loser. No, with the triathlon, I was a casual, I'd come back. I was a lightweight. I was in good shape. Rowing. So the one thing people don't realize with rowing is the training volume for rowing is, I think, basically rowing and cross-country skiing are two of the highest training volumes for a sport because it's low impact. And so you can do both heavy duty and you can recover.
Are there injuries a lot with rowing? Is it
people break ribs because they pull, but normal things, but it's just really, you can grind. Your hands get destroyed because you're, little things like that. But it's in general, young guys rowing, you can push it really hard and then you can push it again the next day. And this was back in the day before the Whoop straps and stuff. So we would be testing our resting heart rate in the morning to see what they are. We were doing all the things.
Quick aside, what's your favorite piece of wearable tech? What do you recommend? What do you not like?
Well, I like the Garmin Apple Watch, all those things, but I like actual nice watches.
Oh yeah.
So I just don't like those. So I'm a Whoop guy right now.
Okay. Yeah, Whoop's great.
I'd probably do
sponsor us after this.
Do they? Maybe they would, right? I also like the Aura ring. I haven't worn it yet, but I want one.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to do it in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And so it's anyways, but, triathlon was basically, I thought, I need to do something for fun as a hobby. So I was a personal training at a place here in San Diego, going to seminary, doing this whole thing. And, I said, I'll do triathlon for fun, And so rowing's cardio. So I used to be a water polo player, so I could swim. And cycling, I'm I like getting into it. I love the gear. I love trying to buy the things. I try to build my own bike, bit by bit, and it was so fun.
The roadies, man.
I was into it, and I got the stuff. So I had this bike that I built myself. I remember it was not even that great, but it was great for me. It was a Kestrel Talon. I remember was the frame, and I built the wheels. But anyway, so the San Diego International Triathlon I'd go to, and the first year was, I don't remember, but by a few years later, I was really good on the bike and the swim. So I remember one year I did really well, and I finished in my age group that year. I finished second place, which was great by I don't know, a few minutes. And the next year, I did great. I swam, came out of the water, I don't know, seventh. I came off the bike first. I think we rode, I forget how many miles it is, the San Diego International. It's not that long, but let's say the bike, I think it's like 20 miles, 28 miles, something around those. And I averaged like 28 miles an hour, like solo, no thing, just cranking on this thing. And it was all because of rowing. Rowing's all legs. And so those guys that had come out of retirement, one of them when he's in retirement was a cyclist. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to go try this. And so I did well. And the running is what killed me. I remember that year for the thing. It's a 6K, I think, at the end. And I ran like a 6:45 pace, which I was like, this is great. It's sub-7. And some guy just at the very end just passes me.
Oh no.
And I'm like, what the heck? He must be from he won. I didn't realize I was in first of my age group, and he won by 23 seconds. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to beat him? So I did my normal habits, and I realized this guy was trying to shoot for like national team stuff. And I'm like, I didn't quit this to go for that. So I quit, sold my bike the next day, sold everything. I'm like, I'm not a quitter. I'm just like, I don't want to pursue this. Like I can't obsess about this in the right way. Right. All right. So,
and that guy made you retire.
He made me retire.
Did he make it to the Olympics?
I have no idea. I didn't even remember his name now, but I remember at the time I was like, all right, let him have it. I can't go put into this, because I was doing the thing where I'm like trying getting running coaches where I'm like, okay, how do I get my foot contact? You have to use a beeper, kind of like in swimming, a little metronome. I was doing all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, I gotta stop. So I sold that, and so I wrote a fixed gear bike after that, so I could like relax.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm an obsessive person.
Yeah.
No, it was like a fixed gear, like hipster bike. I just rode that. Yeah. So that was I was riding it like 100 miles a week. I was still like Mr. Obsessive, and I needed to find a sport. And I tried a bunch of things, but then I ended up a few years later. I tried to play fun soccer, but like the Vavi League stuff isn't fun.
Oh, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, but it's intense for like retired people. It's just not. It's not.
Yeah, that's
and then
weird. It's the worst dynamics.
I tried to surf every day for a while, and I hated it because, I'm down. I like surfing. Yeah. I just don't like the idea that it's not good when you want to go. So I'm like, I'm going to go at this time every day, and it doesn't work that way. So you just feel lame going at a certain time. And if you're like, I'm going to get in the water, and there's like no waves, you're like, what am I doing? So I couldn't keep up with it. I needed something to like pursue that would help me study and do what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that was great. So
what year was that?
2012 or 13.
2012. Wow.
2012 or 13. So yeah.
So 12, 13 years into it.
So I think right now it's 2025. So I mean, like I'm about 14. What is that? 2025?
Yeah.
So 13 to 2012. Yeah. So I was about 13 and a half-ish years.
Man.
So yeah. And then for that, I trained like a good 5 days a week, every week for the last, almost 14 years.
I'm starting to notice a theme here, which I'll phrase into a question, but it sounds like with all of these, so you have water polo, you have rowing, you have triathlete, you have jiu-jitsu, you have all these disciplines that require immense focus, and the curve, the arc is not short. It's
right.
Years.
Years.
And so much, especially nowadays in today's society, is a lot of folks love immediate gratification. Yeah. And we're all about the shiny thing. Oh, where can I go? Where can I go? And there's all sorts of dart around, and nobody gets good at anything.
Right.
And so you get like all these people who are like kind of mediocre at all this stuff, and everybody's peddling something. And
yeah.
They're like, I'm a little bit better than this other mediocre guy. But go into it a little bit more as far as like I don't want to say secret for success, because it's not really a secret, but the secret for success, Matt.
Well, yeah. So I'll give you an example. So when I was a trainer, I remember seeing guys that would come in, and they'd be in pretty good shape, let's say, and they're there all the time. And I was like, okay, good for them. Look, they're getting in shape. But what was so crazy is if you show up the next year, you're training, you've been working the whole year, same guy's showing up, and maybe he's grinding. You see him like he's doing his thing, but he looks the same. Mm-hmm. And I remember it's hitting me, especially when you see some of the guys that might be like taking stuff, doing this, and you're like, you took that, and that's how you look. Like, come on. My point was they would just be looking the same. They weren't doing what's necessary to change, because change is hard. Like if you want to, and if you're lifting weights and you want to get bigger, you have to be willing to get fatter. Yeah. I would just, for a second, you want to get leaner, you have to willing to lose a little bit of muscle. You have to just be willing to be extreme and then do one thing. So I think most people get stuck in third gear, and they're in that no matter what they do. So even if you do CrossFit, at first, for the first bit, it's good. And then you kind of get back into third gear, and you just kind of, if you are going to chip away, it's in third gear. And so most of us are looking for a shiny, happy thing that we can hit. So I remember with rowing, it's actually very true with jiu-jitsu too. And I'll get into that, but like it is that you would have your goal. I want to do well at this next race or in the next race coming up. And so you try to figure out, if you go on Google, like every search is like, how do I lose 10 pounds in a week? Or, you know, that's what everyone wants.
Yeah.
And of course it's really hard and it makes you want to quit. And then when it's over, maybe you hit it, maybe you don't. And so it's just not very effective. And so, you know, that old quote, like people, you know, overestimate what they can do in a short term, but way underestimate what like years of consistency can do in the long term. That's true. So like anything where you set goals that are far down the line, if you just chip at it and you stay steady and you say, what's your 4-year goal? Now, most people think about for careers, maybe like if you're a businessman or someone, you think, oh, what's my financial goal? How do I invest? But they wouldn't do that for like getting in shape or even more importantly for their spiritual life. They don't know the Bible and they're like, there's no plan to know it.
Right.
Or, you know, so I think the idea that you set a plan and the plan doesn't have to come to fruition right now. And then, then you chip away at that little bit by bit. And so your first year could be something as simple as, I want to create a year I'm consistent showing up 3 times a week.
Okay.
And maybe you have to change your workout so it's way easier. But if you're clear about your goal, it helps you.
Okay, so I like the portion talking about going and like having a plan. So how would you suggest folks, our listeners, go in and would have a plan?
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like that's almost like the hardest part is like, oh, I just got to get started.
Yeah.
And you can get overwhelmed with the long off plan. But
Yeah, let's use training for example. So we're talking about, right? So when we'd have clients, and you'll see this right now with your clients, and then you see someone that's running. And so you say to her, like, why are you running? She's like, well, I want to do cardio. I'm like, why? What's cardio? What is that? And they're like, well, I want to lose weight. I'm like, then why are you running like that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, no, for real. Like, why are you running like that? And I'm like, every time you run, you get better at running. Your body adapts to being better at running, right? If they want to just get in shape and burn calories, why aren't they running like this? Like crazy. They're running with more efficient, like our bodies don't work that way. Our bodies work. So if their goal is to be faster, my favorite joke was someone says, I did a marathon. I'm like, great. Like, what are you doing? I'm going to do another marathon. I'm like, did you win? Like, there's nothing wrong with completing it, but once you do it again, like, what's the goal? Just to finish it. That's that rut where we just like, okay, we reach a thing and I'm going to try to hit the same thing over and over again. Our bodies, I think, naturally are meant to like achieve goals. So for example, running, if you run, so that you'll run faster or you'll run longer. Losing weight that might be a byproduct. It's just not a goal. Your body doesn't work that way. Yeah. Same with getting stronger, getting bigger. So that you have to have goals. So let's say when you have a goal, if your goal is, say, I want to get leaner, well, then you have to honestly weigh the things you're going to do based on that goal. So if you say, I want to get leaner, let me use one that's more relevant. I want to get bigger. Guys say this all the time. Guys want to get bigger. That's where I'm at in my life right now. I want to get bigger.
You're looking okay. You could be bigger.
Yeah, I want to be in the WWF right now, right? So, no, I want to get bigger. So, like, but the goal is when you go to the gym, what's the natural thing? And you face this, I face this. You start lifting with your friends, and you say you're on the bench press. And then what's the next question? Like, how much you bench or what you do? And guess what? It doesn't matter for getting bigger. Yeah. Because we get distracted because we forget our goal was to get bigger, and then the mission drift comes in and say, you start wanting to get stronger than your friend. That goal doesn't necessarily get you bigger. Right. Right. So then all of a sudden you're starting to like lift in such a way where you're resting too long. You're doing, too few reps, which might help you do something else. But most people, that's not their goal. Their goal is to get bigger. And the same with like jiu-jitsu. I want to be good at fighting. And then what happens? You start making weight for a lighter weight class. You start changing all your moves that are going to be focused just on like tournaments. And really you're focused on being good at a tournament, which is going to be about who gets the right points. Your first goal, you kind of lost because you want to be better in the class. And so it's just normal for us to get that drift. Yeah. So if you can hit your first goal and then keep like filtering everything you're doing through that goal, it's going to make you do things that are odd. Yeah. Because most people are terrible at making improvements and changes in their life. And so if you want to be good at that, set your goal and then filter all the things that are happening, whether it reaches it.
Nice.
Because it's hard. Filter. Yeah. And filter everything by it. So you're like, okay, I want to burn calories. Yeah. And you're like, okay, walking burns the same amount of calories as running the same distance. You just do it faster. Yeah. People say, well, no, that's not true because you keep burning. Okay, whatever. But in long story, if it's just burning calories and it's not being good at running, what's the trade-off then? Well, walking takes too long. Like, so you just, okay, now I want to burn calories, but I add another element. I want to do it faster. All right. So now is there a better option? But by being really clear about what you're deciding, It gives you clarity to make choices. But I'll be honest, like most of us aren't good at that. That's why you need coaches.
Yep.
And you need people to talk to. And there's almost always someone that's done it. And you got to be able to filter what people tell you, because sometimes someone does something and they might say something wrong, but it still worked. And it might even be something else they didn't say. You got to listen to what they say, hear it, and just kind of copy some stuff. But critical thinking, set a goal, filter things through that goal. It's really not that hard in that sense.
Yep.
It's, so that's the main thing. And I'll say this, jiu-jitsu is a great example of this because
yeah, Ben, tell me more. Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the most humbling sport. So what I liked about it right now is that as a pastor, I did little, fighting stuff before this. I did other martial arts, fun things, and dabbled in a little MMA fun, just for fun, but nothing good. And so, I was relatively have the same arrogance most of us have, which is I'm sure I'm pretty, I'm in shape. I bet I could fight. And I remember doing my first class and getting just rolled up by some brown belt, like little guy that looked like a librarian. And I remember being like, man, I would have underestimated that guy. He beat me up. And then everyone beat me up. And it was so empowering. I loved it because I was realizing, like, first of all, I want to learn this. Second of all, I really enjoyed being humbled because it's truly humbling. Like, I can't make an excuse. Oh, if I saw red, like I truly had to tap out.
Yeah.
And so I like that. I like that as a discipline. And I also liked it because in jiu-jitsu, as opposed to other arts, like it's so effective because it's scalable. And so I just like that as like a thing walking around. And so, so I started training and got, kind of obsessed right away. And I played the game a little bit where, a few years into it, I started losing weight to compete. And I'm like, I got to stop. Like my goals, I had to filter, right? My goal going into this wasn't to fight for weight. I want to be able to fight and be good at this with every weight class and be good at this just in life. And so, some of the things I did in the beginning of jiu-jitsu that were maybe odd was I was young 30s, 32, 33. Yeah, 33. So I was 33 when I started. I'm 46. So that's right. 13 years. Okay. Math. And I remember when I started, I'm like, I'm going to really pretend like I'm old.
Okay.
And because I'm like, if I'm going to do this, by the time I get a black belt, they say getting a black belt takes like over a decade. I'm like, by the time I get my black belt, I'll probably be older. And so that's how I was thinking at the beginning. And so I, started off playing guards and playing a style that was suited for older, weaker, unathletic people, even though I was in good shape, even though I was in my 30s. And it really paid off later. And that future thinking about things in the long term is kind of what I'm saying. That's a really odd, because the initial game when you start was, I'm going to be on top. I played as if I'm old. I pretend as if I'm old early on, and it's paid off so much now.
So the future thinking, pretending you're old, as far as like, what would I do if I was an older guy?
Yeah, but it's just like, why am I going into this? I want to be good at this, and by the time I'm an expert at this, so to speak, I'm going to be in my mid to late 40s, going into my 50s, 60s, 70s. I need to have a way of doing it that's going to be good. I'm like, this is just normal stuff that sounds crazy to think that far ahead, but it was wise. I'll give you a totally side story. Anyone watching this is going to think I'm so crazy with my jumps, but when I first started dating my wife, I knew this is a girl. Becky. Rebecca. So I knew this girl I want to marry 100%. And she had like 5 roommates. She was a student at Columbia and she had 5 roommates. And I knew early on, this is a girl. And so probably like 2 weeks in, maybe 3 weeks in, it was right after, I think I knew I loved her right away. It was like crazy. I went and bought a dozen roses for each one of her roommates and none for her. And everyone's like, why are you doing that? And they were like, and here's where I was a brand new Christian. So I was still very art of war thinking. But my logic was at some point, these girls are going to see me spending all this time with their friend and they're going to start talking about me in a resentful way. But if I preload the game with the flowers, what are they going to do? They're going to say to her, man, he's so nice. I love that guy. And so later, they don't really have the cachet to say, he's taking you away. I never liked him. They can't later when she saw that, she's like, were you really thinking ahead? I'm like, yes, I can't help myself. That's how I think. And so I do that when it comes to every goal. What is the end goal? And then brutally filtering everything backwards. And it's really helpful.
Gosh, that's such a good skill.
That's
a gift. And it's obviously, it takes skill and building on it, but that is
Well, I think it's a compulsion though. I mean, I'm born that way. I don't think about it. I can't not think that way. And so as a Christian, as a pastor, this has helped me with studying, with writing, with praying, with just kind of the wanting to grow in the Christian life. And so for me, I wanted to know the Bible. And so I'm like, well, how long does it take to read? How many chapters? And I would just like figure it out. And I would just over and over again do that. In fact, my number one thing for our church, I say this all the time to our people, I think people in churches read too many different things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they
Like
study
too many different like other books or like
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. And if someone's watching this, like, read all the books. I'm not telling you not to study. Obviously, study. What I'm saying is, if your church is preaching through the Bible, like, so we'll use ours as an example. We go verse by verse through the whole Bible. And this now that you know my kind of basic background, you'll understand when I say this to the church. I'm like, if you hear a sermon on Sunday, and you actually all week actually try to think about that sermon, pray about that sermon, and apply it to your life. You can read other things, but you live in that sermon. Mm-hmm. What would happen if you just did that in 10 years? At our church, in 10 years, we went through, I've been a pastor 17 years, okay? And we've been through the entire New Testament, every single verse, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, everything. So if you'd been here for 17 years, you would have applied every verse of the New Testament and almost the entire Pentateuch to your life.
What more could you want?
Well, that's what I'm just saying. I'm like, who does that? Even reads it, right? So I'm like, so in the Christian faith, you can see the same kind of mental thought. Like if you just applied that, and so everyone's like, well, I'm gonna look at this, I'm gonna study this. I'm like, just do that grindy chip away thing. Where are you going to be in 5 years? Like, what would it look like in 5 years if you just did it? And honestly, you ask most Christians the next day, 5 hours later, what was it about? Oh, I don't remember. But then they go listen to another podcast. And none of it's just like the person running to do cardio and never really losing weight, doing the same thing. It's just, you have to plan. And so kind of like, you see how it all kind of comes together. And so it's really basic things, but like, if you don't have any experience of that, you have to trust the process. It's for example, I was telling one of my daughters, like, she wants to learn, she was like, how do I find my way in the Bible? I'm like, you could do it my way, but here's another way. Why not read the book of John just over and over again?
Yeah.
And while you're doing it, listen to a sermon, I don't know, every 3 days from John, because you can go on our app and do that. And so she was here for them, but she was a kid. And so she's doing that, and she's going through John and hearing a sermon. Imagine how well you would know that after 7-8 months.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, you're going to totally know John. And remember, the goal isn't to master it, it's to be mastered by it. And so, that's the same thing. So that's why I left the rowing. I wanted to take that discipline, like what Paul says in Corinthians, right? And I wanted to pursue the Lord with that. And so that same kind of, I hate saying goal setting because it's like, but yeah, goal setting, like just, and put that discipline into it. And I'll say this, my entire seminary career, all my athletic career, my spiritual life, that's been the foundation that I think God's used. And it's so boring. It's so straightforward. It's so just, I'm a robot, and I love the grind.
It's so undramatic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's undramatic, but it does lead to, big results down the line.
Yeah.
So
and truly, that's the consistency that is probably like the most, talking about the, who's it? It was Einstein who said he said the most powerful force in the universe was compound interest, but
yeah,
lesser than God himself.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the idea, right? You just kind of keep going. I think the thing that's challenging though for this is that you have to, and this is where as a Christian, there's joy. I think we're addicted to like constant encouragement in results. Like you mentioned, the shiny object. We need to constantly be told how well we're doing. We need to see results right away. Yeah. As a Christian, if you know that the end is that you win, that God wins, that the whole thing happens, you can enjoy the process. Like there's a re-enchantment in our normal life. And what I mean by that is like, the mundane things, then the normal life, we're always like, I need to live this big adventure. But what the Bible tells you is that all of a sudden history's not cyclical. There's a God. History is linear. There's a purpose to history. There's a purpose to the grind. It's going somewhere. That God is good, that he made everything for his glory, which means you can glorify him with washing dishes. You can glorify him climbing a mountain. You can glorify him in each of these things, but if it's done for his glory. But what that does, it takes the mundane stuff, being a dad, being a husband, and it makes it meaningful. Yeah. And so in that grind, when you're doing the weights or when you're doing the jiu-jitsu or you do the thing, jiu-jitsu is a great example. You get they call it the blue belt blues. You're getting beat up by everybody. I mean, when you're a black belt, the way you get better really is you just beat up blue belts. And so when you're a blue belt, you're like, it's the blue belt blues. Like everyone's beating you up. You're just getting all these techniques, but you can't really apply them all yet. And guys quit. They say the number one way to make a white belt quit jiu-jitsu is to give them a blue belt. Because they quit because that's your mountain to climb and you get there. But if you can see the grind as like itself, like its own end, you can enjoy it. So one of the guys and I was meeting with the other day, he was telling me a quote he heard from a writer. I don't know if it was Stephen King or someone. He said, most people want to have written, but most people don't want to actually write. And I thought that's such a great way to describe the process. Like, I think you have to enjoy that grind and realize that there's like virtue in it and enjoyment and worship in it. And that the results, they're fun when they happen, but you're almost bored of results. The grind itself is so awesome and fun. And so I'm a grinder. I love it. I loved training more than competing, and so that's how it's always been, today. So,
okay. Yeah. That's beautiful. Well said.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. I think the two parts I want to get into before we let you go was the kettlebells. So you and I both have this. I remember during COVID, it was a tough time for everyone, and we each had our unique individual struggles, and all sorts of stuff was going on.
Yeah.
And we were both doing Simple and Sinister, and that was my first real. I actually was introduced to the 10,000 Swing Challenge by Eric Preston, and the only thing I had during COVID for equipment was kettlebells. Yeah. So go into it a little bit as far as like talking about the grind, the consistency with the tool of the kettlebell.
Yeah, I mean, all right. So it's funny, I don't really use them right now because just really as an aside, because my goal is hypertrophy right now, right? And so kettlebells are not the best tool for that. Yeah. And so here's something I was doing well at that I'm like going to put to the side because my goal. So anyways, no, but when my goal is when I'm training and I don't have the time and my goal is just to stay strong and fit, I like the kettlebells. And so I like Simple Sinister for me because of the jiu-jitsu training. And so Pavel, when he wrote that and did it, there's a simplicity to this that I enjoyed, a grind to it that I enjoyed. And the idea was that if you were a police officer, you were a fighter, you were someone else, you could use this training and it would kind of really strengthen you in these areas. But the thing that got me into it was I actually, from jiu-jitsu, I had some, I forget which arm it is. I think it was my right arm. My hand was numb. I was getting this big impingement and I went to get all this therapy and I realized the kettlebell swing fixed it because we were at a desk all the time. And then doing jiu-jitsu, you're like here all the time. And the kettlebell like gets your shoulder like in place. It's stabilized and all of a sudden it fixed this issue. So anyways, for me, the swings were great. And so during COVID, I bought, started with the 53.
Yeah. I started with the 18 pound.
Oh, wow.
When I was like first going, I could barely do a Turkish get up with the 18 pounds.
Gosh.
And I did it and it was like, oh man, I did it wrong. My back hurt. I'm like, oh man. And you're just like, what am I going to do?
But I would argue your back hurt because you started too light.
Yeah. No,
I really think so. I honestly think the purpose of it is that's kind of my point, right? Like I love that it has its own kinesthetic feedback as you do it. That's my favorite part about the kettlebell is that if your back hurts, you don't take a break from the kettlebell. You just do it right. Like you do it so your back doesn't hurt. If your back's hurting, now you know it's wrong. I love that. And the Turkish get up, if you can't get up or it falls, then you couldn't do it. But if you can get up, it has to be heavy enough where it only works if you do it right, I guess. Yeah. So in one sense, the heavier it gets, the more dangerous it is to drop it, but the more safe it is on your body because you can only succeed by doing it perfect, right? So
I had the storm.
Yeah, I like that. So, but yeah, I think the kettlebells were great because it's the 100 swings and the 10 get-ups. And it's pretty fast. I like that part of it, but I love the grindy discipline of that. And the idea for me, what I would do is I would finish jiu-jitsu. So we'd have our classes, like say an hour and a half, and I go and pick up the kettlebells while I'm still sweaty and I do it. And it was really good because your grips are tired. You can't really cheat. And it was really, I'll give you an example. People would join me and they would do it once.
Yep.
maybe they'd start to do it more. But as you go up, if you don't keep going, it starts to become impossible. And so I never made it to the true. I think the sinister goal is 106.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that right? So I never got past the 88s. I could do it daily, like 4 or 5 days in a row. And I just never bought the 106. And I never really like invested in trying to go for it. I was like, I think the moral of the story is I'm a quitter in one sense. Like we get to these like points, I never pursue it, but I do like the kettlebell, the simplicity of it, and I find myself wanting to go back to it in sometimes soon. It does feel comfortable, and I want to hit that 106. And but yeah, right now I want to get big and do hypertrophy stuff. So which is totally worthless for my training for jiu-jitsu. It's just pure vanity right now. Yeah. So
amen. So, Matt, as far as Christian men right now, what are things you see? If you could tell everyone a piece of advice, what are problems you see? What would?
Yeah. Well, I think Christian men are picked on a lot. Okay. I mean, so, but I get it. I just think like if you go to normal church experience, Mother's Day is always like, oh, moms, you're the best. And Father's Day is like, man up. And so I think that there's a lot of like, I get it because we live in a culture that has effeminized men, but I don't know if it's always in the ways we think. I think the sort of the homosexual culture, and this is over caricatured the feminization of men. Like it's true. But there's plenty of like manly, godly men. I think what happens though is that in response, and this is where Christian men fall into it, there's the culture has created a caricature of an effeminate man where, you've got sort of no strength, no real like strong values in the sense, no sort of no real ability to stand up, no ability for violence, no ability for, just like an effeminate man. So then the church, because the church often is responding to things, has sold a picture of man that's a caricature also. So in the men's groups, what are they going to do? We're going to have a men's retreat. It's like monster truck racing and grilling out, and they'll have like guys fighting. And like, look, I'm here saying I do jujitsu and I do this. So I'm like, I get it, but it's a caricature of men as well. I think biblical masculinity begins with Christ and discipline. So I'll say this. I think the number one thing for Christian men today isn't patriarchy. Like I'll say this, in Christianity, obviously, wives, it says wives submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives like Christ loved the church. You see like a real gender roles. Amen. But the Bible doesn't say husband, make your wife submit. It says love your wife like Christ loved the church. And the church wasn't submitting to Christ when he died for the church. So husbands need to be worthy of submission, and men that want to meet a wife should be pursuing being worthy of that submission. Mm-hmm. And if they never get it, willing to die for that person anyways, which is different than today's thing where it's like this sort of new cultural contract. It's trad wife. I think that's bad for men. I think it's bad for Christian men. It's a knee-jerk reaction that's unprincipled. But I think any guy that's pursuing Christ with discipline is going to become more masculine. Because, like, how can we do this and not take seriously the things it says? So obviously there's gender roles. I think those things are true. We can say those things without having to caricature being manly. You can be manly and still watch a romantic movie. Like, what I'm saying? Those kind of caricatures are still sort of unhelpful. And Christian men are the most vulnerable in so many ways because so many ear-tickling churches are willing to sell them sort of a caricature of masculinity. And so, I think, the discipline to follow the Lord. Like, I'll say this, if you're a Christian man and you're not reading your Bible and you're not disciplining yourself and following the Lord, what kind of man are you, honestly? Yeah. Like, straight up, like, let's be honest. Like, I'm a Christian man because I'm tough. I'm like, well, then where's your Bible? Why aren't you reading it? Why don't you study it? How are you going to lead a wife and kids if you can't lead yourself? Yep. And all the men we're all addicted to pornography. We're all addicted to like this thing. So I'm like, I get it, but like, I don't like that conversation as much because it's true, but you read Proverbs, right? And in Proverbs, you have the Solomon's advice to his son, and he contrasts wisdom constantly, and he uses the voice of wisdom as a voice of a woman's voice. His wisdom cries out in the street, and she calls in like, let them hear my wisdom. And then in contrast to that, the folly is used as the voice of an adulteress. And so if you think about it in a normal way, we have the picture of don't commit adultery, don't do this thing, amen, as if the other voice would just be piety. Now, I know there's a lot, but let me just explain it. Wisdom is the opposite.
Go into piety.
Piety is as if like piety is just like, here's my rules, here's my, I'm gonna avoid these circumstances because through my actions, right? My discipline almost, right? But wisdom is contrasted, and I love this because, and this is so good for men. This is, I guess, my point. The most manly training book is Proverbs in a way, because Solomon's giving this advice to his son. And what does he say? He says, listen to the voice of wisdom. And what the voice of wisdom is giving, it's like gold. It's better than gold. But the voice of folly is the voice of an adulteress. And she's on every street corner and she cries out and they come into my way. And he goes, and like an ox that goes to the slaughter, he follows her to her house. But the notice in both cases, they're both crying out for their attention. And it's interesting because you talk about like the pornography, you talk about the stuff. I mean, with the internet today, the men growing up today are being hunted constantly. You cannot go on the internet without it hunting for you. That voice of the adulteress, the voice of folly is being piped in more than ever in any time in history. So I get it. I know that guys have that distraction where I'm like, the answer to darkness isn't to just like wave at it, it's to add light, add wisdom. And so he says he constantly like, commends wisdom, like pursue wisdom. And then at the final point of Proverbs, chapter 31, is the Proverbs 31 woman. What is wisdom? So instead of finding this adulterous circumstance, which is all about selfishness and power over this, he says like a godly woman who can find a wife, a good wife. And it describes the Proverbs 31 woman as like the wise choice and answer of these things. Now, again, you can take this too far. This isn't to say you're saved by marrying. Yeah, that's not what it means, but it just means like in our natural pursuit, what does that tell young men, even Christian young men? The way we view women, the way we view dating, like which voice are you listening to? When you're talking about, oh, I'm going to meet her, I'm going to these dating sites, nothing wrong with dating sites, but I'm like, what's your goal? And then when you're pursuing it, like, where's that fit? So to me, Christian men pursuing wisdom need to add wisdom. They need to be like, I just don't know how you can be, again, a Christian guy, not following the word, not disciplining yourself in it, and looking for a godly woman, which gives women advice to say, if you want a godly man, you want to be a godly woman, like both those things should work themselves out. And so, Proverbs is a great book to read. That description of wisdom, the discipline it tries to talk about, talks about the sluggard, all the things we're talking about are in Proverbs. But it's just fascinating that the subtext is this, like these two voices, and they're both feminine voices. And the final kind of culmination of wisdom is the Proverbs 31 woman finding a good godly woman. I mean, that's exciting stuff. And I don't know. I like that. You think about the marriage and family and the idea of like looking for these things. Whereas for most of us, we're looking for someone that's going to give us something. So everything's transactional. I'm going to look for a woman that's going to give me something, and I'm going to give enough to get that thing. And that she's doing the same thing. We're both basically selfish people in a transaction, which is how the world operates. But wisdom, and in the Bible, I'm fully loved by God. And men, this is absolutely important. Like you're not ready to sacrificially love a woman if that woman needs to validate you with her love.
Yep.
Like you have to be fully loved by God and believe that.
Yep.
And now, this is what I'm talking about. This is masculinity. I'm fully loved by God. So I'm not codependent waiting for this person to validate me, to make me. So now I don't need their reaction, which makes me free to love unlovable people. And how much more does it let me love my own wife?
Yep.
And so that kind of like pursuit is big. So I think if they were to boil it down to one thing for biblical masculinity, read your Bible. I mean, can we make it more simple than that? Like, do it. Like, absolutely. If you're not good at reading your Bible, get good at it. And if you have no plan to do it, like, come on. Like, that's make a plan so you can get through it. And, I'm not going to put a burden on men to say how often you should get through it. But I will say this. When I first got saved, I read the Bible 3 times that year. And I think 2 to 3 times a year was not hard. People could read the Bible a lot more. I think most people think the Bible is boring because they read it too slowly and they don't read enough of it. And so if I could just tell anybody here that's listening to this and you've never done it before, and if you've never read the Bible and you've been a Christian for more than 5 years, drop everything you're doing and read it in 90 days. And don't try to understand it, just read it. I'm going to start preaching. I'm sorry, but that's my advice. Like, read the Bible. That's my advice for masculinity and men, and don't get add wisdom. So
Thank you. Yeah. Awesome, Matt. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on. It's we're definitely gonna do it again. That was so much more to get into, but that was fantastic.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.